Did y'all see that meme that was like, nobody understands the bond between someone and the mediocre book they read when they were 13? Well, I wouldn't call it mediocre, but I was 12 and the book was Tithe by Holly Black. And this is the exact book, if you can't tell. And I've had it for 20 years. Literally have carried it around in bags with me, taken it on like every trip just as a comfort read, just in case I needed it. Sorry. Since then, the author has become wildly popular for her The Cruel Prince book series. Both of these books are based in fairy. During my last reread of The Cruel Prince, which was actually, I listened to it on the audiobooks, and the audiobooks are very good. I realized that Holly Black did a really good job of describing clothing. Like, I noticed it when I was reading it, but it usually takes me a couple of reads to notice things like that. And she is just so descriptive about these little details that kind of like tie you to the characters and give you this image of them. So what I am here to talk about is the fashions in The Cruel Prince. Maybe I will do Tithe at some point, but I need a reread of it. So last year I spent about a month rereading and marking every single described article of clothing, hair, some kind of styling. And over the last month, I've been cataloging it in an Airtable, which I will link below if you want to dig through it, if you want to make anything from this book. I've only done the first book so far, so if this is something that you want to see with the other two books, just let me know and I will continue it. But it is a lot of work. Okay, with all of that said, let's just start talking about the costumes. So for these costumes, I figured we would just go alphabetically because I am just gonna go off of my Airtable that I created. So we're gonna start with Balin. Balin is the Prince of Fairy, and he is the firstborn child of King Eldred, and he's just like a sucky dude, to be honest. But he does have some pretty cool fashions. So on page 18, Balin is described as wearing a great coat with a bear fur collar and a shirt with a cuff. I don't know about you, but like, that sounds really extravagant. On page 344, Balin wears a black and silver doublet. The doublet is black and it's thickly embroidered with silver patterns of crowns and birds, looking heavy as armor, and he's also wearing a silver circlet. And then on page 180, his crest is described as 3 laughing blackbirds. I mean, as far as crests go, that's pretty cool. Next, we have Brambleweft. Brambleweft is the dressmaker. I don't know if they are the dressmaker for all of Fairy or all of the royal, you know, upper class of Fairy, but she comes to Jude's house and helps them plan out their dresses for a big ball. So on page 142, she's wearing a woven dress with embroidered lines of thorns making a striped pattern. Now this is one of my, I really like this. I would really like to make this myself because you have like a linen type dress with stripes as thorns. As long as it doesn't look religious, I think it would look really cool. On page 146, Brambleweft sketches out their dresses for the ball. The sketch of Jude's dress, which is described as a corset with 2 golden beetles stitched like a breastplate with Maddox crest, which I'll go over later, and it's really cool. And tiny sheer gold drop sleeves. At a different point in this book, she describes the fabric that Jude chooses, which is a velvet blue-green. So it's a velvet blue-green base with a corset with 2 golden beetles. On page 145 and 146, we get a really good descriptions of different types of fabrics. This is when Brambleweft comes to do the sketches and let them pick out their fabrics for their ball gowns in a list form. We have a stiff gold fabric, We have an iridescent, color-changing fabric like beetle wings. They have a spider silk. There is a purple fabric shot through with gold and silver, described as looking like moonlight. And it puddles over the cushions, looking like moonlight. I need that fabric. If you can tell me, if you see this fabric at Mood or Joann or at a thrift place or something like that, let me know, because I need my moonlight fabric. Jude claims a blue-green velvet, described as looking like the lake at dusk. Taryn claims a fabric that is embroidered with moss, butterflies, ferns, and flowers. Vivien chooses a violet that looks silvery gray. Oriana chooses a blush pink fabric. She tends to lean into pink fabrics. And Oak probably didn't get to choose because he's a child, but he was given a cricket green fabric. Seems like a lot of his things are green. All right, our boy Cardan. Cardan is the youngest prince of fairy. He's a product of his environment, we'll just say that. Cardan is the most flamboyant dresser that is described in the book. They talk about his closet at one point, and it's just filled with so many like detailed things with feathers and smocking and velvet and everything that you could think of that would be like just incredible wardrobe of a prince. Even a prince that is the least popular of them, like, yeah. On page 28, Cardan is described as wearing a high collared tunic embroidered with thorns, and he's wearing many rings. On page 50, they just say that he's wearing boots. On page 73, he is wearing armor, and it is a silver breastplate described as gleaming steel, and it hooks over the shoulders, and it is said that it is more ornamental than protective. So this is just a showy armor. This isn't to do anything. He's not going to battle. He's just trying to show off a little bit, you know? Make armor fashion. That's kind of like our trend right now anyways. So on page 80, Cardan wears loose white linen and a flower crown of roses. On page 99, he's wearing soft leather shoes. Page 158, he's just wearing loose linen clothing. Well, it just says loose clothes, so I'm assuming linen. On page 169, at a party, he is wearing an unbuttoned loose white shirt, and his mouth is flaked with gold. On page 173, Cardan wears green velvet with golden stitching, picking out thorns tipped in blue thread. So I'm just assuming that's like a green velvet doublet with golden thorn embroidery, when the tips of the thorn are in blue. On page 232, this is the cosplay that I see the most because it's just very extravagant. So he was wearing black leather gloves, a black suit of clothes, raven feathers cover the top half of his doublet. He's wearing boots with excessively pointed silver-tipped toes. He is wearing a crown of woven metal branches, and he's wearing silver makeup on his cheeks and black eyeliner. I feel like this is a statement look. So you show up wearing this, you're like, hey, sup, pay attention to me. Or be frightened of me. But if you're in fairy, you'd be frightened of everyone, I imagine. On page 251, I believe he takes a silver fox mask for somebody to wear it for secrecy. On page 343, Cardan wears a coat over a vest and a loose shirt. He's also wearing breeches, and all of these articles of clothing are different shades of cream. He's still wearing the same silver-tipped boots from the last outfit, and he's wearing one single sapphire earring. On page 369, he's wearing breeches, waistcoat, a coat that is fitted at the shoulders, tapering in at the waist and falling mid-thigh. That just sounds like, oh, I just want to wear that. It is a deep burgundy velvet. It has ivory velvet at the lapels, shoulder, and waistcoat, and it has gold stitching throughout. It also has gold buttons. He's wearing tall boots with gold buckles, and he's wearing a ruff of pale owl flowers. I don't remember like when I was reading that, but as I was writing this down, I was like, can you imagine this ruff of owl feathers? The boy's got taste. On page 21, he wears black eyeliner under his eyes. He has a golden circlet, and he has a long black coat with a jagged collar, and on the collar it's stitched with constellations. I feel like I want this in my wardrobe just like as an everyday look. On page 113, he's wearing an extravagant doublet and breeches with a gaudy fur-edged capelet and a spider silk shirt. Come on, like these combinations. Yeah, okay, that looks like it is it for Cardan. The next character that we have is Prince Dane. Prince Dane is the third born son of King Eldred. Okay, so Prince Dane on page 229 is wearing a leaf brown jacket, which I love that, a leaf brown as a description. Prince Dane on page 236 wears a white tunic, some kind of animal hide pants, a gold collar, and high boots. On page 18, he wears breeches that go down to his knees. And that's it for Dane's descriptions. His outfits are obviously not interesting enough to write down. But we get a little look into the type of outfits that people are wearing. There's lots of breeches, there's lots of doublets. Moving on alphabetically, Fand, I believe Fand, off the top of my head without looking it up, is a knight. And Fand is wearing armor, that has different shades of blue that vary from ocean to berry blue, and wears a green sash across the breastplate. The character Ghost, their only outfit description is that they wear a boot. Heather, which is Vivien's human girlfriend that they go and visit at a mall, she's just wearing modern clothes with her own artwork hand-drawn across it. King Eldred, he is on page 17 wearing a gray robes with heavy golden oak leaf crown, and he has lots of rings on his finger. King Eldred on page 235 wears a heavy robe encrusted in jewels and an oak leaf crown. Jude. Jude is our main character. She is a human living in fairy since her parents were, I don't want spoilers. She's been there since she was 7 or 8, since she was a young child, and this is her life now. So on page 9, Jude wears her braids back off of her face. She also wears her stockings inside out, and this is a protection, and this helps that she would never be led astray. So if her stockings are inside out, the fairies cannot lead her astray. On the very next page, this is when we get her hairstyle that we see everyone cosplaying, and it is hair braided into an elaborate style that looks like horns. I haven't seen anyone braid the hair into the style, which is how it's described, so I'd love to see an actual braided horn style. On that same page, she is wearing a sapphire velvet gown. It's not described any more than sapphire velvet. So on page 17, wears leather slippers. On page 25, she wears gray leather boots and a tunic with Maddox crest. And Maddox crest is described as a crescent moon turned on its side, so it rests like a cup, and has a single drop of blood falling from one corner. And it's all embroidered in silk thread. On page 29, they describe the rowan berries that she wears around her neck, and this helps her as a human to not be ensorcelled, and not become under a fairy's spell. On page 29, she wears a tunic. On page 41, she wears a robe over a nightgown. Again, her shoes, she's wearing boots. On page 54, they take a trip to the human world, and she's wearing modern clothes. So she's wearing jeans, a gray sweatshirt with a black star, and glittery silver Converse. She's also wearing a slouchy knit hat. For a tournament on page 70, she is wearing a slightly padded tunic, and it's stitched with metallic thread and Maddox crest. It is scented in verbena and lavender, and it's wrinkled because she dropped it on the floor and then went to sleep and picked it up off the floor to wear. On page 91, she wears a long black dress with gold cuffs, lace made out of green braid, and ink on the gold cuffs. And this is described as one of her comfortable favorites. On page 98, under her black gown, she's wearing a mint and black polka dot bra and underwear, and this is modern. On page 107, she packs a shift in a velvet cloak. This is her clothing to wear after she's doing something. On page 136, she wears a blue silk dress and pretty hairpins. On page 148, I did want to say that her skirt has pockets. So thank you, Holly Black. On page 158, she wears a tunic, and that tunic gets bloodstains on it. On page 179, she's wearing servant garb, cloak, and leather shoes. On page 195, she wears a velvet top and pants with boots. On page 203 and 220, this is the most popular gown that I see people talking about that they want to make, and that is the ombre ball gown. It starts out white at the throat, deepening to a pale blue, down to deep indigo at the feet. On the skirt, there is an outline of trees stitched on it and crystal beads above that to look like stars. She wears dark blue silk gloves for reasons I won't describe. And she also wears a big enough choker to hide bruising on her neck. For other reasons I won't describe. Man, it's tough being in fairy. On page 212, there's a petticoat described. At the same time that Cardan earlier, we said he has a fox mask that he took from somebody, Jude takes a black velvet mask. On page 343, she wears a bottle green gown with berry earrings. Now this is, I want that myself. And there's so much freedom in that small description. It's like, okay, I can make any green dress I want, and I can have berry earrings, like little hanging. On page 104, the servant's dress is described as homespun, a homespun dress with the royal crest on it. On page 167, Jude borrows a dress from Locke's mother, and the dress that she borrows from her closet is a gown with dancing fawn silhouettes on the skirts. Her hair is braided into a crown, and the dress has a golden acorn in the pocket, which is relevant to the plot. That's all of Jude's descriptions. The next character is Kai. Kai is from the Tithe series. She is a main character in Tithe, and on page 228, she is wearing a pearl gray slip dress and heavy lace-up boots. And these are mortal clothing. In Locke's mother's closet, a few things are described, and they're all moth-eaten. She has a skirt with beaded pomegranates, a skirt that lifts like stage curtains to reveal a stage with jewel mechanical puppets. Now, she liked some attention, and I love her for it. And also the skirt stitched with silhouettes of dancing fawn. So Jude's father, Maddox, one of her fathers, I don't even know, yeah, we'll just call him her father. Maddox on page 1 is wearing a long dark coat. On page 2, the coat is described as a brown leather duster, and he's wearing shoes shod with silver. And as he's walking, the shoes rang hollowly. On page 14, Maddox wears a deep forest green. On page 219, he's wearing gold earrings up the side of his pointed ears, and he has golden claws over his fingers. Side character, Nicasia. She is wearing a diadem of pearls and cobwebs netting over braids. Wow. That's just a badass crown. Oriana, her stepmother, Oriana is married to Maddox. She, on page 14, wears a green and gold mossy dress with an elaborate shining collar. On page 180, Oriana wears a gown the color of unripe mulberries. Her pointed ears are tipped in crystal cuffs. On page 198, she wears a day gown the color of unripe persimmons. She really likes unripe fruit, I think. On page 202, she's wearing her ball gown, and it's a pink deepening to red, and it looks like enormous petals spreading to the train. Queen Orla, she is Nicasia's mother, and she is a queen of the undersea, On page 344, she wears a gown of woven seaweed, a collar of pearls, and a crown with pearls that looks like webbing. Like mother, like daughter. Roach, who is a spy, on page 122, he wears an imitation of a court doublet, but it's made out of scrap leather. Oiben, who's with Kai, he wears an entirely black outfit with a curved blade on page 228. Taryn, who is Jude's twin sister, and they're like mirrors, but they're opposites. Like many twins, they're not the same. They have their own personalities, their own ideas. I think early on in the books, it's interesting that it's described as to assimilate in fairy. Jude wants to become a knight. Jude wants to defend herself and be stronger than everyone else to fit in. Like use her strength to fit in. And Taryn is described as wanting to fall in love. She wants to become a fairy, become one with fairy. So I think that's an interesting take on two people. The same things happen to them, and this is their way of dealing with it and how they want to push forward into their future. Taryn on page 11, her hair is described as long chestnut curls. She's wearing a capelet, and she has a few strands of her hair braided with silver thread. On page 42, her hair is braided in a crown, and she's wearing brown and gold. On page 51, she's wearing an undescribed dress. On page 55, this is when they're going to the human world. She wears pink jeggings, a fuzzy cardigan, and ankle boots. It's interesting how unique they are even in their human clothes. They're very distinctly different. On page 67, she wears a dressing robe, and it is the color of scarlet compared to flames in the fireplace. On page 202, Taryn is wearing her dress is described as embroidered fabric, and it is a mantua and a stomacher. On page 341, Taryn wears a skirt the color of ivy, stitched with the pattern of falling leaves. Now that just sounds really pretty. On page 11, she wears a crimson velvet. Also, this is when my notes get a little weird because these are unknown characters. So an unknown character wears a dapper little suit, which love that for them. An unknown character on page 236 wears a patchwork fur skirt, which is a skirt made out of different fur patches put together. An unknown character on page 236 wears a wrapper garment with fabric like birch bark, which I need a wrapper like that. An unknown boy wears an owl mask and a gold headdress on page 16. On page 17, the unknown boy has feathers around his neck. On page 17, a group of unknown girls have roses in their hair. The only flowers described so far have been roses. So I'm wondering if the other books there's other flowers described. On page 62, when they're at the mall and they have an altercation with a boy, he is described as wearing a too big black t-shirt and a wallet chain. An unknown knight on page 17 is wearing scarab green armor. A group of unknown ladies on page 16 are wearing gowns with long trains. Valerian, he is a character that's a part of Cardan's court. Cardan's court consists of Valerian, Nicasia, Locke, and himself. On page 21, Valerian is wearing a deep red unknown garment, and he has rubies on his cuff like drops of frozen blood, which might be a bit of foreshadowing. On page 155, Valerian is clad entirely in red, so deep it looks black. Also, I think we can tell some things about characters based on what they're wearing. Vivien is the half-sister of Jude and Taryn. On page 55, when they go to the mall, Vivi is wearing black jeans with a white shirt and big mirrored sunglasses. On page 190, Vivien is wearing a long green fur trimmed coat with frog clasps. I I don't remember this while reading the books when I was doing my read through, but how iconic is a freaking long green fur trimmed coat, very Y2K, with frog clasps? Just imagine that in your mind. Just imagine showing up somewhere in that, because I would die. On page 202 and 225, Vivien wears the silver fabric described earlier. It is a silver gray dress with tattered edges. It is artfully sewn with moths that seem to fly from the shoulders across the chest, and they gather at the waist, and her hair is up. And on page 13, Vivien wears jeans and a billowy top, which I feel like is a good fairy compromise. Like, she's wearing a tunic and jeans, which is a style that I like to wear day to day. That is it for the costuming described in The Cruel Prince. I thought that was so fun. I hope you did too. And if you have made or are planning on making a Cruel Prince inspired cosplay, I would love to be tagged in it. I am just obsessed with Holly Black in general as an author and her writings. If you like this video, please like it. I'm not gonna say subscribe because this is not my typical video. So if you want to go watch another sewing video of mine and then decide if you want to subscribe, that might be the better thing. Sometimes people make one-off videos and you don't actually want to subscribe to them. I don't know what I'm saying. Early March, Holly Black is coming to Orlando for a book event. She has the next part of this series that is related to Oak. The second book in that series is coming out. I am going to make something, but I don't know what it is yet. So if you like, which one of these things should I make to go? She is doing a cosplay contest. I'm not gonna make something that I feel like would win a cosplay contest. I wanna make something more just like, I just wanna make it, and I wanna be a fairy, and I wanna go to her book event. So yeah, anyways, I have no idea. Thank you for watching.